Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Melissa Torres, and I work on the SharePoint Experiences team, particularly looking at things around SharePoint IA, so the SP App Bar, hubs. I also own the site creation experiences and templating story. So I'm super excited to talk to you about a feature that we'll be actually rolling out very soon. The SharePoint App Bar, which is our solution for providing a consistent navigation for both global navigation that you can customize, as well as a solution for our users to be able to wayfind their way across all of SharePoint content. This is what the SharePoint App Bar looks like. So here's a cool little mock of looking at it at the home site. So we are introducing what we call a skinny left bar to the SharePoint Surface UI. In that bar, it'll display on all modern sites as well as the SP Start page. And one of the things that we are very excited about as part of the app bar is this concept of a global navigation. So for quite some time, one of the common requests we get is we want, our customers wanting to provide intranet wayfinding in a way to provide the most important resources, whether it's to their HR site, to their learning site, to their LCA site, to their benefits site, and allow users to get it from anywhere they're in. So that means, if they're working on their local team site or they're looking at their divisional portal, a quick one-click way to be able to get to those most important resources that you curate for your organization. And so we're excited that this app bar surface will provide that global entry point. And then we're even more excited about the fact that it's not only about the global navigation, but also the user personalized wayfinding. So one of the common requests or feedback we get from users is, they find it hard to navigate and they want to, quickly jump back to the site that they know that they recently visited. And so we're providing again, one-click way to get to their sites, to their news, and to their recent files. So again, from every surface area. So if you're wondering, if we announced this feature at the last Virtual Ignite, but if you haven't seen it, I'm going to actually demo it in a second, but here's kind of a side-by-side look at all the different tabs that we support. And so the global navigation is kind of what you would expect here with navigation nodes. And the sites is kind of focused on the users. So we call the site's news and files the user's personalized view. So it's the, Melissa's view of my frequent sites, my followed sites, news that's recommended for me, which is a comparison, puts together, sites from news from sites that I visit, as well as some of them from the authoritative news source, and then my recent files, which that one's fairly known. Can we scope to different sites instead of all internal sites? Have it right now? It's kind of it is very similar to. We actually use the same API and source as you're familiar with SharePoint Start page. So that is limited to just the sites within SharePoint. So, but really, really good feedback. And then there is a see more actually experience. So if you click on the see more, that'll take you to SharePoint Start page to get to see more. And then a common request that I get is for the mobile experience, but let me actually kind of switch over and demo that. So here's our demo environment. I'm going to be demoing how to set up your global nav. So this is kind of messy right now. That will not be the end state. But what I wanted you guys to look at was the global nav itself. So in the app bar. So here's the app bar. You can see that it's on this nice looking communication site. You can see that it's also on team site, so that it's across all the modern surface. And click on global navigation. This is, we support up to 3 levels, just like our current navigation does. And then here's your frequent list of sites. Somebody asked a question around, to see more. You actually click on that and it'll take you to SharePoint Start page. We will be able to see the full list of frequent sites that you have. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that experience. The same thing happens in the My News. So at the bottom, there will be a see more that'll also take you to the SP Start page full news experience. As you can see here, it's news. also shows up the authoritative news with the decoration. So that way it highlights things that are, authoritative. And then last but not least, here's the files, the recent files list that contains the name of the file and the location. So you can understand where your file is coming from. So that's the app bar. And then if I close this out, if I move this into mobile web, you can see here that the app bar actually gets docked to the bottom. And you have the same goodness. It's just at the bottom instead of on the side with the same kind of pivots. And then it does shy away as you scroll down. So, it's not bothering you. And then it comes back up when you need it. So that is the app bar at the highest level. And so what I'll be walking through today is all the components of how you set it up, specifically the global navigation. Excited to kind of walk you through in detail.
If you don't mind, let me throw you a few questions, which we didn't go through. So can we place translation under this global navigation links? Is there a way of controlling the navigation or the translation of those links, or how are we seeing the titles of those sites? Or is it always the title of the site?
The title of the site, you mean on the frequent sites list or
Yes.
on the global navigation?
Yes, that's the on the left, the app bar. When you're seeing the sites, are you seeing translations or are you seeing the title? And I think the title of the site can be translated if there's a multilingual entry for it.
That's actually a good question. On the sites list, if your site title is translated, is it coming through with the translation? That's a really good question. I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I can definitely find out and apply to the MVP channel once I get some clarity on that.
Well, not all of the people here are MVPs, but anyway, so we'll.
Yeah, fair enough.
Certainly. But for now, it's a fair point. We don't know for right now, but let's follow up on that. Now, Joel Rodriguez is asking, can we add custom root elements and have an empty panel to display a custom solution? So
no, not yet. So for the V1, what I'm showing you is pretty much what we'll be shipping. So it's all coming from us with no extensibility. It's definitely something we're thinking about in the future. I've heard that request already from some customers, but as of right now, no, there's no way for you to kind of plug your own thing in there.
Good. And then Fabian is actually clarifying the question. My question was about the global navigation links. I think that's on the global side of the navigation. Can those be translated based on the name?
Yeah, so similar to, behind the scenes, when I show the setup for the global nav, so if you don't mind, hold on that question, because I'm going to show up how to set up the global nav, and I'll talk a little bit about that, because at the end of the day, the global nav is sourcing from a site. And so in the site, you can translate links. And so we actually can surface those.
Good. Then somebody was asking, is this available now? It's coming soon. Yes. We'll probably talk about the timelines in the latter part of the presentation. So
yes. It's coming very soon. We are close to posting the message center post for TR, for targeted release. And once we finish targeted release, then it'll go hit to general availability. So in weeks, we hope to be out there.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be available in GCC environments as well, because it's intended to be the de facto way of exposing or having the navigation across all of the SharePoint Online deployments.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. So our intention is definitely to be available in all environments. I believe GCC is included in the initial release. GCC High and some of the other more tenant requirements will not be in the initial release, simply because so as you can see here, for the sites and news, we leveraged Office Graph. And so those environments have that disabled by default. And so we need to make sure that we provide a good enough experience for those users. So that's another thing, even for users outside of that environment, we're still working on the experience for what happens if you have Office Graph disabled and making sure that the panels are still usable for you. So in the interest of time, yes, we will support all the environments. In terms of rollout, the GCC high and some of these other environments might be what I would describe last in the full rollout.
And then there's a pair of questions, one more. Oh, actually, two questions. This is first one is a two-part question, and then we'll go back on the presentation, sorry. And there's a lot of interest, obviously, in this one. The one question is, can we switch it off if we have an alternative global navigation mechanism? But related on that question is the question on, hey, is it going to be available, enabled for customers without them explicitly enabling it? So all of a sudden lighting it up unless it's explicitly being disabled.
Okay, so one of those questions I'll answer at the end. The questions, when we've rolled this out, yes, the app bar will show up. So it's not something that you have to go in and explicitly enable. Yes, it'll start showing up for all users. And then the global nav component is something that you have to do. That one you actually do have to go and enable it. And I'll walk through that. On can you disable it? There's a slide on that, and we'll walk through the explanation for that. So cool. Stay tuned.
Good. I think Sean has a strong opinion related on enabling this all of a sudden for end users. That's noted on the things. I think it's the change. But let's actually, for the sake of time, let's concentrate on the presentation and let's go back on the questions in the later. And if I missed something, just let me know and repeat the question in the chat.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so like I mentioned, now let's kind of delve deep a little bit into the global navigation, because I think this one is one of the top customer asks. So I want to make sure that I walk through how you can set it up and how it works. So behind the scenes, we actually leverage the home site for the source. And then what that means is that the global navigation uses all the same features as any other site. And so that means you get to, we support up to 3 levels like I showed. You can leverage audience targeting. And this feature is optional. So if your tenant doesn't have a need for global navigation, you just do not have to set it up. It's not forced on you. It's optional. Like obviously we recommend that you do set it up. And so let's talk about setting up the global nav. And I know that this is like a wall of text, but I'm actually going to demo this. So the first kind of important thing, and let me switch over to the demo, is that the global nav is actually set up on the home site. The home site is a feature we shipped. It allows you to do to kind of basically set a site as your main internet landing page. And when you do that, it changes the behavior for that site. 2 of the main components that it does is it sets that site to be a source of authoritative news. So any news that gets published from that site gets that little decoration that I showed. And the other thing is that it sets search to be global. So it's, you can see here where it says search in SharePoint versus search this site or search across sites if you're in a hub. We highly recommend that for your organization, you set up a home site. And if you want to use the global navigation, you're going to have to set a home site for your organization. The home site must be a modern comm site. That's one of the requirements for that. So obviously, comm sites have been out for quite some time, and we are hoping that you guys are embracing them and moving into using them for your internet landing site. So on your home site, once you've set one up, and here's an example of what a beautiful home site can look like. Under the gear settings, you'll now get a new setting for global navigation. And so when we enable this feature for you, you're going to get the app bar, and then somebody who's an admin, an owner of the home site can go here to global navigation settings and take the first step, which is to enable it. Now, if you do not enable the global navigation, there's still an icon here. It's actually going to be a home icon. And if a user clicks on that before you set it up, or you're a tenant you don't have a need for global nav, so you don't want to set it up, once you click on that, it'll actually always take you to the SharePoint start page. So that's the behavior if you haven't configured your global nav for your tenant. But if you are going to configure it, which we hope you do, then you can go to the settings and click enable. And then once you click enable, you can then start to set it up. And so the things you can do is you can set up a logo, not required, up to you. We recommend a 20 by 20 pixel transparent logo. And then you can set up the title. This title is actually what shows up in the panel. So this title right here is totally configurable by you. If you don't do anything, we actually try to help you by adding the tenant name. And then you pick the navigation source. So, and you can pick between the home site and hub combination source. And I'm going to go into more detail about this in a minute. Now, one thing that is very important, which if I go back to my deck here, you'll notice that I highlighted as step number 3 is before you set up your global navigation, you'll want to make sure that your home site is shared with everybody, because everybody needs to have access to the site in order to see, to get access to those navigation nodes. So in terms of setting it up. And the other thing is, even though I know a lot of you might be excited for the feature and you want to be waiting for it, here's the good news. You don't, like, if you wanted to start working on your global nav, you could start setting up now. And so you can start curating your navigation nodes. And that's kind of what I recommend here. You know, determine what your global navigation source is going to be, start curating your nodes, start sharing your site. And then once the feature hits your tenant, you can then enable it and, you know, upload the logo, update the title, and choose the navigation source. You can start building this today, no need to wait. And I did want to call out, because this is something that definitely will get brought up, is that changes to the global nav might take 24 hours to reflect for your users. So do take that into consideration when thinking about, you know, what updates you're making, expectations. The editor making the update should see it immediately, so you can get that instant gratification of like, oh, did it get added? Yes, it did. But for your users, it'll take a little longer than that. So that is how you set up the nav. But now let's talk about the config options. Just really quickly, kind of key takeaways from here. You need a home site set up for your organization. That's where you set up the global nav. You can start curating your nav nodes today. No need to wait for the feature to hit your tenant. And this will make more sense once I go through the navigation sources. And so I would say, and then don't forget to share your home site so that people can actually access it. Okay, so let's talk about navigation source options. So the note, like if you saw from the demo, you could actually, there's 2 options to pick from where to source. And that is because there's actually, and you guys are SharePoint experts, you probably know this, there's actually 2 navigation sources on a site. I know, there could be more, but yeah, we're going for 2 here. And so you can pick between your site navigation or your hub navigation or global navigation, as it's referred to in the panel. And so why did we give you multiple options? So the reason we did this was for different layouts that folks want to have on their home site. And so there's different permutations of the home site. There's ones that are just the home site by themselves. There are folks out there who have a need for a home that's also a hub. And so we wanted to give you the most flexibility in how you style your home site, while also giving you the flexibility to have all the features that you get for navigation today on sites. So to make this more clear, I'll kind of jump into a demo. So to kind of get it the most obvious, this is the hub navigation. So this is a site that is both a home site and a hub. You can see that it's a hub because you see the navigations at the very top, the hub navigation at the top. And so if you pick hub or global navigation, we're going to pull the resources from the hub navigation. And so that's what we're doing right now. You can see here quick access, you can see organization, benefits right here. The other option is the home site navigation, which means we would pull the nav nodes from here. And so the reason we did this is so that you can configure your home site to look how you want. So in some cases, you can configure it to look like this. I'm not a big fan, if you see all my videos, I don't tend to have a hub nav and the site nav in one place. So what we've done is, if you want to change that, we now have the ability to hide the site navigation. So you can see here that I can hide it. And that way you get a much cleaner. Then you just have the hub, and then you have this. By the way, internally in Microsoft, that's what we do. And so we use the site navigation as our source because it doesn't display, and then our hub navigation. And the global navigation is sourced from the site navigation. So that's just kind of one of the options that you guys can use. The other option is this is still in a hub, and this has to do with headers. If you want to choose an extended header, then again, you can still be using the site navigation to pull your global navigation, but now you can have this. Actually, you can see the hub navigation that gets moved down. And this is to make it look the best with the extended header option. So just kind of showing you the different kind of permutations you can do on a one that it's hub enabled. And then here is a site that's not a hub, and you can see that it's not because you don't see the hub navigation here. But same thing, like, even though it's not a hub, you can see that I'm actually pulling the navigation nodes from the hub navigation that's hidden here. And so if you ever need to edit it, you can do it through here. So you don't have to click on the edit over here. So your home site doesn't necessarily have to be a hub. That's totally fine. And then you can pick. I know this is sometimes kind of hard to follow, but our attempt here was to give you multiple options so that you can choose how you want your home site to look while picking which one do you want to source for your global navigation. And, in some cases, some folks will show both the hub navigation and the site navigation. And so the global navigation at that point will be a duplicate of what you'll see on the site, and that is fine. That is up to you. So a little bit of that is up to what you prefer that you want it to look for your organization. So the power is in your hands almost. And now let me go back to the other environment. The global navigation has all the features as regular site and hub navigation. So up to the 3 levels, label support, audience targeting. And so it's like editing any other nav that you're familiar in SharePoint Modern today out of our kind of out of the box nav. I saw the comment, this is going to confuse the heck out of people, but it seems like it's not that complicated. I know, yeah. So we're going to provide documentation for here's what your options are. It's one of those things where we wanted to give as many options as possible, but giving those many options means that it's more complicated. We're going to have here's our recommendation for how Microsoft recommends you set this up. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit like what people kind of want to do. Obviously, I think the majority of home sites are not hubs, and so that makes the choice this a lot more simpler. But I wanted to cover you guys the fact that we support all these kind of states. So, but yes, the power is in your hands, and we try to explain it here and learn more. The other thing that's very important is please remember global navigation is a top of the intranet feature, right? So you shouldn't it's not an everyday user kind of thing. It is for those set of people that are in a role of managing their intranet that probably they can get accustomed to these many options and so forth. So it's not like an everyday user. So the bar is a little bit higher in terms of that. Multi-geo tenant. So as of right now, we have a single nav to rule them all. So it's not, you can set up a global nav per geo. Definitely looking for feedback there if that's something that people would want. But as of right now, when we ship, it's just one that's global. In Microsoft, we are multi-geo and we only use that, right? Yeah, we only have one nav. The power must be in my hands and only my hands. Nice. Okay, let me go back to the deck. So this is just kind of giving those options, like I mentioned, here's an example of the home site with extended header and picking the hub's navigation. So just kind of highlighting the options. We're going to release documentation that explains these options better so that folks can pick and choose what they want. Now, one of the common questions I get is, my organization doesn't have a home site yet. We want to get one, but we are in the midst of setting up our brand new home site. We don't know yet, we don't have all the materials or all the content that will go on it and all that good stuff. Am I blocked on it for now? And so you don't, not necessarily. So you can actually just create a home site. You can take an empty communication site, make that a home site, and set it up just for the global nav. The caveat to that is that the home site must be shared with everybody in the organization so they can access the global navigation links. So that means that people could find it via search if they search for it. But if you're not storing any other content on it, the likelihood is probably low. And also if you're not linking to it from say your global nav or from other places, then the likelihood of them hitting it is not that high. And also you should only be sharing your home site anyway with read permission. So at worst, they'll just see an empty site for now with read. So just something to consider because it comes up. Obviously we recommend creating a home site and using it. So if you're in the state, it's hopefully you're not in the state for that long. So it's more of a transitory, like, hey, we just really wanted to use the global nav while we work on the home site, and then a couple of months later or a couple of weeks later, you transition to your new one. Just to confirm, global meaning for the tenants at home site, not per hub, where we had update each hub before. Correct. So this navigation is one across all sites, across all sites. So you update it once and it gets reflected, like I said, for global navigation in particular, in 24 hours. So it's wherever your home site is. Your home site doesn't have to be your root site. So it's literally just your whatever you flag as your home site. Cool. So this is not so much on the tech side of things or how the feature works, but I get this question a lot, so I thought I would share it with you folks. What should I put on my home site navigation versus what should I put on my global navigation? And even more, there's another version of this in the future of like, if your home is a hub as well, what should I put in my hub navigation if you want to use all three? So this is just some quick best practices. Like obviously for us, our guidance is the global navigation is really the most important resources. Your top of the internet functional department sites, your popular destinations for guidance like benefits, policy, getting support, and content that's relevant to the daily functions of people in your organization, like your commute, if you guys have commute options and so forth. For the home site, then it should be more local, then more focused on content that's on the home site itself, like links to other content within the home site, links to news, organizational profile, like who we are, who our leadership team is. So things not necessarily that have to span across everywhere that might seem like oh yes, everybody should know who we are and who our leadership team as in the global nav, but to be honest, probably not something that people are looking at that frequently. So probably better to keep it on the home site. So hopefully that helps a little bit in terms of thinking about how to do that. So, this to us, we're very excited for the app bar because we've been on this journey. We introduced hubs a few years back, and then we introduced this concept of the home site, which is your internet landing site. And then, we are also working on associated hubs. That is in preview now with some select customers. We hope to also release that very soon. The app bar will come first. So just kind of setting those expectations. But the app bar really is the thing that kind of ties it all together. And it does provide that, global aspect that folks have been kind of talking about. Okay, so let me take a breather here a second, really quickly. I have a couple more slides. Is this available in the Gov tenant or only in the commercial tenant? So like I mentioned before, we will be available the goal is to be available on all tenants, on all environments. From a rollout perspective, though, some of the more like GCC High, for example, will be at the very end because the sites and news tabs need to have a good experience, even though you have Office Graph disabled. And so we're still working on that. So just kind of letting you guys know. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going because I see a lot of thread going back and forth, and then we'll want to. Okay, so one thing to answer one of the questions you guys have had. So what you need to know, when we release, this was brought up before, it's not a feature that you opt in. It'll just get released to your users because you may or may not, again, the global nav is one component of it, but it's not every single component, right? We are very excited for the user wayfinding opportunity there because it is a common request from end users that they can't find their content, they can't find their sites, they can't find their news, and we hope to grow that list. And so for that reason, we want to release that to all users. But we understand that, some organizations might have their own implementation. So for that reason, what we're allowing you to do is to temporarily disable the app bar when it comes out. So once we put the message center post, in the message center post, there'll be instructions for disabling it for your tenant, but it is a temporary disable. It's even the command name. And so you can basically, it's a way to delay the rollout of the feature. And right now we're giving the timeline of October 2021, and we will let you know as we get closer to that date We'll send you reminders and message center posts to alert you of that. But that is our plan. If you don't disable it, then yes, it'll show up for your tenant. And like I said, it'll show up for your tenant, and then the global nav will be there, but it'll just be a home icon. And then once you set it up, then it'll start showing up for your users. So it is tenant-wide switch. That means that you cannot disable it on specific sites or enable it only for specific people. And then all the 4 tabs come together. So, you can't disable one tab versus another. So, for example, you can't disable the news tab or like the files tab or so forth. So hopefully, we're very excited for this. We understand that there is complexity here with what customers are using today, but we really want to get this to end users while also providing the global nav functionality, which has been asked for by many, many customers. And so that's kind of why we're going with this approach. If I understand you correctly, you can effectively disable it permanently by not having a home site, though? Nope. It doesn't matter if the home site only controls the global tab. So if you don't have a home site, the app bar will still show up, and it'll just be that the global nav tab will just be a home icon that will take users to SP Start page. So somebody asked, so impact to customizations. So it's worth calling out that, we've tried our hardest to include this into the SharePoint UI so it doesn't break any customizations. If you do have customizations that are not but entirely blessed, I don't know how to call them. It is possible that, specifically if they're absolutely positioned to the left of the page, that it does have an impact. So we do ask you to call out for that. If you notice anything outside of this, please report the bug and let us know, because we want to know. But do consider that their impacts. Again, we hope that these are low, but just kind of setting expectations. And then
related on this one, Melissa, before you go forward,
yes.
On the classic side, that's a question which came up as well. But on this one, there was a question previously actually in a chat, which is really important for the partners, which is if you are using the top placeholder, where does that stand related on the app bar on the left? So will the top placeholder push the app bar down, or will the top placeholder be on the right side of the app bar? I don't know if you're following up on the question, but if you're using SPFX top placeholder extension, which is quite common to use as a custom global navigation, will it push the whole thing down, or will it push only the right side of the elements down? And I think we might need to follow up on that after the call.
Yeah. I'll have to follow up on that one for sure.
Okay.
But that's a really good question. I'll make sure to follow up and include that in our documentation. So thank you for bringing that up. Cool. Classic sites. So the SharePoint App Bar is not available on classic sites by default. So there is that. But we are providing the capability to add it manually to a classic site if desired. So it does require code changes by you, and it'll require these code changes on a site-per-site basis. We're not publishing that guidance when we initially announce the feature in the message center post, but eventually, after some time, we will. So heads up on that one. Cool. So I know we have 5 minutes. So another cool component, this is more of a sneak peek. One thing important that I want to call out is that one of the benefits of setting up your global navigation is that it also shows up in the Viva Connections app. And so here, the Contoso that you see here links, this is actually being sourced from the global navigation that I just showed you. So you have to take the steps that I just showed you before to get this nice look of things here. So this is how everything kind of works together. Details about this experience and all that, I'm sure my counterparts, Pratik and Tejas, will be stopping by one of these meetings in the future to talk about. So I'm going to delve deep into this one, but just kind of giving you a heads up. In terms of future thinking for App Bar, I think I've already kind of mentioned these. This is what you'll be getting as our first release of it. We're very excited about it, but we're already starting to think about, and as we get feedback, thinking about the next set of improvements. So here's just at this point, future thinking. Nothing is on the books yet, as they say, but we're starting to think about creative affordances. So surfacing the ability to create sites or create news directly from the App Bar. Introducing new tabs. So we're going live with 4 tabs. We're thinking about, what other tabs would be useful to our users. Item keeping, so we show you things like followed sites, for example, but we don't allow you following in the panel. So we're thinking about how do we do that? So surface, that, and as well as a story for other item keeping in another. And then, brought up, and Vess has surely been asking me about the extensibility of the app bar and how we can grow it. So definitely thinking about that. So I'll stop here quickly to go through any questions.
Norm has a question which came up a few times. What about all sites? Is there a capability or functionality to show all of the sites in the left navigation, which might be useful for a small deployments? Obviously, large deployments listing all of the hundreds of thousands site collection, not a wise thing to do. So what about showing all sites is the simple question.
So I think about that, and there's two scenarios for that come to mind. One is from a information architecture. I want a drop down of like all the sites in my tenant. That's something that we are not looking at currently, to be completely transparent, because we anticipate and celebrate that users create as many sites as they need. And so that could get fairly wieldy fairly fast. So that's one scenario. And then the second scenario is the users, like in my personalized sites list, like every single site that I have access to, right? Like essentially my all sites. And that's definitely been come up as well, but also not something that we're currently looking at, but I think it's really good feedback.
That would be a nice extension, which we can share as a community, sharing whenever the app bar supports extensions. So whenever that's available. So that's a good scenario. Then there was I think Neela Muging is asking about the chain hub sites under another hub site. That's the associated hub sites. You were saying that that's coming out relatively soon.
Yeah, that'll be at the start of Q2 for us. So that'll be the end of March, April timeframe. And just to make sure people understand, the most value add of that feature is the search. So the ability to basically, search not just on this hub, but it searches across the other hubs underneath it. So hub of hubs, that's what I was just talking about. Can we add icons soon to navigation links? Not right now. We don't support icons, but that's really good feedback.
But you can use emojis, right?
Actually, technically I know you can. I don't know if we recommend it. So design might, I might get in trouble with design if we say that we recommend that.
Good point. Cool. We have one last minute. I think it's time to close up the presentation from Melissa's side. So thank you, Melissa, on that.